The Hamilton Fire Department recently presented its annual report to city councilors. Last year across the city, they responded to 287 structure fires, and 11 people lost their lives in those homes. With those numbers showing that there's still work to be done when it comes to ensuring everyone is fire safe, we're joined by Chief David Cunliffe and Deputy Fire Chief John Verbeek. So, folks, Chief Cunliffe and Assistant Deputy Chief. There you go. As you said, there could be people watching. Don't want to scare anybody. 287 structure fires was significant. This was from the 2016 report that you delivered to council recently, last week, correct?
Yes, a couple weeks ago.
And that's significant. How significant was it for you that obviously it started something?
Well, Doug, I think there's some outcomes that we have seen from those 287 structure fires. First off, last year, 2016, was one of the most significant years that in terms of fire fatalities, fire deaths. We had 11 fire fatalities last year. And of those, 7 fire fatalities happened in residents that did not have working smoke alarms. You start to look at that number, and certainly then you look at it in terms of all of the structure fires, the 287, and of that, only 48% of those that were residential had working smoke alarms. You know, certainly those types of numbers is absolutely unacceptable. You know, when you start to then look further in terms of what those causes are, the 2 significant main causes are careless smoking and unattended cooking. And when you look at the 11 fatalities, in 9 instances where we had 9 people, those were the top 2 causes. These are absolutely preventable fires. And when you start to look at the causes, they're not only preventable, but it's based on human behavior. And it's extremely disturbing. I stood before the media along with the fire marshal's office after we had the 2 fires on Grenfell and Niagara Street, where we lost 3 people in each of those fires. And I made a commitment to the citizens of this city that the fire department was going to take a look at what programs we've been doing, and because we needed to make a change. We need to do something to help to further protect our citizens. And
making change when you've already had some very proactive programs in itself makes a statement.
Well, absolutely, and you know, it's not that we haven't been doing anything. We've been doing lots, as you said. I mean, we do a number of public education events throughout the city. We have a school program that we're going in and educating our youngsters. We have an Alarmed and Ready program where we offer smoke alarms. We'll go into homes where people can't either afford or they have physical disability. We'll go in and put them up. We're out. We're very prominent around, and you know, I guess the biggest thing from my perspective and from our perspective is, you know, this is not just a problem for the fire department. This is a community issue. This is where we need to engage the community. We need to start getting more assistance from it, because again, when you're dealing with a behavioral issue, it's really something that's everybody's responsibility. So what we did is, and I'll turn it over to Assistant Deputy Verbeek. He's been the lead on this and working with our staff and stakeholders of the community to help us to understand what we need to do.
Yeah, so, you know, as the chief indicated, you know, in the fall of last year, he committed that we needed to do something different in terms of how we were going to educate the public. We've had a number of programs in place for years, but I think what we needed to do is we needed to get back out into the public, into the neighborhoods, and educate residents in their home. We needed to make sure that residents understood, number one, what was causing the fires. You know, the careless smoking and the unattended cooking. We also were disturbed by the fact that 48% of the homes, you know, had working smoke alarms. There's still a large number that didn't. So we decided that what we needed to do was start knocking on doors, going into the neighborhoods, knock on people's doors, have a discussion with residents and talk to them about, you know, fire safety in their home, the leading causes of fires, how to escape from a fire if one should happen in your home, and more importantly, talk to them about smoke alarms. Needed to make sure that their smoke alarms were working, and if they needed assistance with installing smoke alarms or replacing batteries, we would offer that service to them.
And I'm assuming here, many of the fires happen in code red areas in our city, older neighborhoods. Generally, there's poverty issues in some of these neighborhoods. They can't afford necessarily to put in smoke alarms. If they're renting, then they're relying on somebody to be following basically the law here to make sure there are smoke alarms in rental and lease facilities. And I think Code Red from the Spectator kind of showed us that there are certain neighborhoods that are higher risk for exactly what you've just been talking about. The smoking and the fact that unattended, which suggests, well, maybe had a couple of beers, come home, greasy food's always going to help me get through the night, and fall asleep. And you have your unattended fire very quickly. That's an assumption on my part. What do the stats actually tell you?
So when you look at the stats, fires happen all across this city. And they can and will happen, and it's not contingent on where people live. It's not contingent on how much money they make. It's not contingent on the types of buildings that they're in. It really becomes a behavioral issue. When you look at it, you know, in terms of the fatal fires last year in 2016, it happened in 5 wards across this city. You know, these behaviors are seen anywhere, and so I think we need to be mindful of that fires will and can and do happen everywhere. And certainly when we look at what's happened, you know, May 1st, unfortunately, we suffered our first fatality, and it was in Ward 8. Up on the mountain. And so I think it continues, and that's what the stats tell us. It's, you know, fires is not something that's necessarily predictable, but it's going to happen because of people's behavior.
My ward. I should have remembered. It was in my ward. So how is what you're now doing, as we've talked about, you've been very active as a fire department in the past. So what is really different about your proactiveness this time around?
I think probably one of the biggest differences this time is that with previous programs, a lot of it, you know, required homeowners to contact us. You know, as much as we were out in the public, as much as we're doing public events, as much as we're out talking to the public, if somebody needed smoke alarms, for instance, you know, it would require them to contact us. Well, now we're more proactively out in the neighborhoods, and in all the neighborhoods and all the wards of the city, both in the rural areas, the urban areas of the city, and we're proactively knocking on doors, talking to people. We're out every single night of the week, Monday to Friday, 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock, and Saturdays from 10 to 12. And we're knocking on doors, and we're having that discussion with people. We're talking to them specifically about the number 1 and 2 causes of fires in homes across the city. We're specifically talking to them about their smoke alarms. And if they need that assistance, while we're there, we're providing that assistance to them.
What is the response you're getting at the door?
Well, I can tell you that we've been at it now for 2 weeks, and we've talked to over 1,500 residents across the city of Hamilton.
That's a great figure. It
is a great figure, and it's encouraging, and you know, we expect that number will just continue to grow as the year goes on. But that is another 1,500 residents that we've been able to speak to specifically about fire safety in their home and educate them on fire safety.
So can you warn me when you're coming to my street? Because that's when I run downstairs and check out my paint cans. They're okay, good. I'll pass inspection.
Doug, I hope that you remove them tonight when you go home.
West Mountain, I'm not saying what street. Where did you start? Well, we started in all wards of the city.
Okay. So out of each station, you've got a map, and okay, yes. Let's go.
Yeah. So out of each station, they have a primary response area. Every piece of apparatus in the state or in the city is out doing those home visits, and it's being done across the city. So.
Because people can be strange, right? When you knock on the door and say, "Okay, do you have it working?" and well, here's the batteries, and then a week later, need the battery for something else. Forget to put it back in the smoke alarm. It's just people do some strange things. Well, this is going to be tough because human behavior, as you point out, is really at the root cause of all of this.
So that's why I think it's really important in terms of those conversations that we're having at the door, It's to help people understand the importance of maintaining, these pieces of early warning equipment that we have to remember is mandated through legislation, that the homeowners are responsible to make sure that they have working smoke alarms on all floors of their residence and outside of sleeping areas. So again, it's helping them to be more aware in terms of what they need to maintain, and hopefully it may change some perception that, you know what, the other part is that having early warning, it may be the difference between you not getting out and you getting out.
Yeah, definitely. Again, you guys do a great job in interacting with the public. So I'm noticing from the report, you talked to over 71,000 Hamiltonians last year. Is there a target figure you'd like to achieve this year with this program?
Well, I think one of our goals is always to continuously improve and get better in terms of what we're doing. We don't set base targets in terms of the number of people. Obviously, the more people that we can see, the more messaging that we can bring, the better off it is. From my perspective as the chief, on a yearly basis, I want to see that we're doing better than we did last year, and we're engaging with more people. The other thing that's important to me is that we're doing it on a broader sense. It's across the city, so we need to get that message across to all of our citizens. It's not just in areas that may look like they need focus.
How serious is the situation? And this may be a little bit off target here, but we have a real estate boom going on in this city. The latest numbers are just astounding. Toronto may have dropped off, but Hamilton and Burlington remain on fire. That means a lot of renovations. It means a lot of people, especially on the West Mountain right now, are selling their homes, 3- and 4-bedroom homes, and if they're close to Mohawk College, they're turning them into student residences. And I think we've had some problems with some owners and leasers of property in the past where they're not following all the codes they should be following. How serious is that situation? When you're knocking on doors, do you run into some suspicious spots that not only need your attention, but may need bylaw attention from the City of Hamilton?
Yeah, I think, obviously as you're knocking on doors, you come across those types of situations. But I think it's important that, to be honest with you, when you talk about student housing, a lot of phone calls that we receive tend to come from the parents of the students.
Yeah.
They're concerned over the safety of their children living in homes, and
because they've dropped them off with the furniture, and they've taken a look at what they're moving
and they want
into,
to make
because
sure
the kid's
that,
going away from home for the first time. Maybe
they want to make sure that not only do they excel and do well in school, but they want to make sure that wherever it is that they're living is safe as well. So, those are the types of homes that our Fire Prevention Division conduct inspections of. In some cases we rely on phone calls from either the residents, or we rely on phone calls from the parents to advise us of the homes, or if they're concerned about something, we absolutely will go and take a look at the home and ensure that it's in compliance. But ultimately, again, it's the responsibility of the homeowners. They have the responsibility to ensure that, number one, their home is in compliance and it's safe for those residents in that home.
So one of the things too, Doug, is just so you're aware, we do also work with universities and community colleges in terms of when the students, before their Students' Week, we work with them. They have lists of residences that are approved, and we're constantly working with those folks to make sure that the buildings are safe from a fire safety perspective. We also are out during Frosh Weeks and other weeks to directly interact with these students to help them to understand, because in some cases it's not, again, they may have working smoke alarms in these buildings, but of course with students, we want to make sure that they understand the importance of fire safety, not putting pizza boxes on top of stoves, and making sure that exits don't get blocked, and things of that nature. So again,
are you suggesting beer bottles are blocking these exits?
No, not beer bottles, but maybe piles of clothes, or boxes that they've brought from home that just never get unpacked.
I'm just having flashbacks from my son's home in Windsor. It was like, wow.
But again, it's helping them to understand, because they get focused on enjoying their time at school, and focused on making sure that they take advantage of that educational opportunity. And sometimes fire safety and just public safety in general is not something they think about. So we do make sure we take the time to try and educate them and help them to understand the right types of behaviors that we need to keep them safe.
Does this program stretch your resources, stretch your person power to meet these goals? Because you're establishing this significant presence on the street. And all of these things usually are attached to dollars. So is there an impact for you to refocus on something like this? No matter how worthy it is, there's always a dollar cost.
So what I would say to you is what we're doing is by taking our resources that we have and putting and mobilizing them on the street to talk with our residents, they're still in service. So they're still in their primary response areas. So if an alarm comes in or a requirement for them to leave, they're going, right? So they'll stop what they're doing, they'll go and attend to that emergency scene, and then they'll come back. From that perspective, it's a fixed cost from my perspective. It's the cost. I mean, there may be a little bit of incremental cost in terms of some fuel, but at the end of the day, when you really take a look at what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to save, I mean, it's about one life, right?
Yeah.
If we can have effect change and get more people understanding and knowing that they need to have this early warning and maintain smoke alarms. It's certainly worth us putting our resources out there to do that.
So you've been going 2 weeks with this. What is the response from your folks? I mean, they're doing the interaction, and they're the ones who have to fight the fires, and they're the ones who have to, unfortunately, be on the scene when bodies are discovered. So I know it's deeply imbued in a firefighter to save lives. So have they just willingly, like, this is a great idea? What feedback are you getting from your officers?
Yeah, I would suggest to you that the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. They see this as an important measure in educating the public. It gets them into the neighborhoods within their response districts. It allows them to converse with residents. And like you said, I mean, they're the ones that are responding to these calls. They see these things that are, and the impact it has on families as a result of a home fire. So, it's absolutely been positive so far.
I did see a story the other day, I believe it was about our emergency services and a funding grant coming through for them to try and, I guess, weed out folks who continuously call for ambulances. And when ambulances are continuously called, fire is always, you have to fill the gap in many respects, or you're responding along with the ambulance. But I guess there are some people, like 156 calls in a year, take me to the hospital. So I noticed that and I thought, that's a good idea, because if there are people like this, and I understand sometimes it's mental health issues, where they're picking up the phone and just dialing 911 and I need to go to the hospital, and you have to respond. I don't know if you noticed that. I think it was in The Spectator late last week, early this week. You know more about it than I do, but I thought, that's a good idea. Is that going to lift some of the burden on the entire emergency response service in Hamilton, police, fire, and EMS?
So Doug, what you're talking about is the funding of the community paramedicine program.
Yes.
Where the paramedics are in basically helping to help people with that have various challenges to try and get them some help rather than having them go to emergency rooms. One of the things that I think that's really important, though, is that when it comes to how fire responds to medical calls, we only respond to approximately 1/3 of the total medical calls that happen in the city, and therefore life-threatening events. And the reason that we're going to that is it's about getting a trained resource, first responder, on scene as quick as you can to help to give early intervention to try and change that potential outcome, to make it a positive one for that person. So I think it's really important. And again, the community paramedicine program isn't necessarily dealing with that life-threatening situation, but what it's helping to do, it's helping to ensure that the proper resources are being sent to the calls that they need to go to.
All right, it's been underway 2 weeks.
2 weeks now.
And so folks right across the city expect to get a knock on the door. They're not looking for the paint cans like they might be looking at my place. I assure you, they're all in. Yeah. They'll be knocking on your door. Listen, most importantly, about unattended meals and careless smoking. And we had a fire death across the street from us, careless smoking, about 15 years ago, and it's just not great for anybody, neighborhood, neighbors, family, obviously, and those firefighters responding. There's a phone number for folks to call?
Yeah, there's a phone number if you're interested in having the firefighters come to your home. If you call 905-546-3382, you leave a voice message. That call will be returned within 24 hours, and we'll set up a convenient time for firefighters to come to your home.
And obviously on your website, there's all the details
And all
you
the
need to see
details.
exactly what this program is and the other programs you already proactively provide.
Absolutely.
Correct. Assistant Deputy Chief.
Doug, thank you very
I
much.
got it right. And Chief, thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Doug.
you both
Thank you.
of you for coming.